Welcome to Kansas City Real Talk, brought to you by KCRIR. I'm Alex Gehring, and let's talk really quickly about my wonderful co-host, Bobby Howe. We have to give her a huge congratulations on her recent appointment to the NAR leadership team. It's a huge accomplishment. She's going to be working on a very small team under the NAR president next year, and in preparation for that, she is extraordinarily busy. So we are testing out this new solo format to see how it goes. Bobby's going to have the chance to tell you more about this when she's back on the show in a couple of episodes. But for now, it's only me. So let's talk about a couple of things before we bring in our incredible guest, Dan Odell. Let's talk about the Realtors Got Talent show for just a second. All right. When Michael McReynolds was on here and we had a conversation with him about YPN, we plugged this event. And I have to tell you, it was an awesome event. The winners of the talent show were Beth Benedict Borders and Courtney Myers, who were incredible singers. Guys, the talent at this thing was unbelievable. You really missed out. Although I have to say that the room was incredibly full. I think it was a great fundraiser for Habitat for Humanity. Amber, how much do we raise?
We raised just over $3,000.
So we raised $3,000. And for me, I performed Nessun Dorma and accompanied myself on the guitar. For those of you who don't know, I am an opera singer, still an active opera singer, but that is not something that I do too terribly often. That said, I also didn't do a very good job of getting the link out to donate. I was bad at publicizing the event. Even though Amber and everybody involved kept on giving me tools and resources to do it. So I was guilty of that, but still it was so much fun to see a ton of my friends and get to perform. I love to perform. And also, Amber, I don't know if you saw this or not, but like the week after we were there was a certain 90s boy band that performed.
I definitely know that Drake Bell was there later that week.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. It's just Drake Bell. Well, still, the Drake and Josh theme song, I couldn't remember exactly what it was, so I was hoping that... I'm used to saying things like that and then like hoping that Bobby knows what I'm talking about so that it seems like I knew and I was just quizzing Bobby. I can't do that anymore. It was just Drake Bell. It wasn't a boy band, but still, the Drake and Josh theme song, he performed that, I believe, and I saw a reel of the Drake and Josh theme song, and it was pretty nostalgic, and I thought it was pretty cool that I was just there a week before singing Nessun Dorma. So anyway, what a fun event. Make sure that you guys are making it out to those things. A lot of effort goes into it, and the number of people that you see that you care about in this industry, it's really a ball, and it's a great experience getting to reconnect with people. Let's talk really quickly about Dan Odell. So Dan is a local realtor here in Kansas City. I have to tell you that when I have traveled for the National Association representing KCRIR and Heartland MLS, I would encounter people from all over this country who, when I would tell them I was from Kansas City, they would ask me if I knew Dan Odell. There's so many people that are involved at the National Association from KCRIR and from Heartland MLS, and still, Dan tops the number of times that I heard somebody's name when I would tell them I was from Kansas City. People know him as a Buffini coach. People know him from other industry things. He is just all over it. And he is a wonderful human being. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about how realtors can differentiate themselves in a competitive market and also get to know his journey as a professional getting into real estate and also what he's experiencing right now. Hopefully you'll pick up some great tips for your business as well. Let's go get Dan. Dan Odell, welcome to the podcast. We're so glad to have you today.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Quick question. I want you to think back 30 years ago to when you started Group Odell in 1995. I want you to think about who you were then and I want you to tell us what from that version of Dan still shows up today.
That's a really good question. 30 years ago, when you're a brand new rookie in a new industry and you're thinking, what do I do first? Okay. One was to find a broker. Number two was to stay married, which are two great objectives. And so far, both of those after 30 years are still maintained. So I'm grateful. I have a great broker. I have a great wife. So check. As far as the person that I am now versus the person that I was, I do think that as a homeowner, when I first got in the business 30 years ago, I still look at this business from the perspective of being a homeowner. And I think that I have always carried that passion is what is the best way to protect a homeowner. 30 years ago, I had no clue how to do that because I was brand new. Like seriously, no clue how to do that. Real estate, I felt called to. There was a bunch of reasons why I got into the business. But I do think that the dilemma of how to serve a home buyer or home seller is still just as chaotic back then as it is today. In fact, I think it's actually way more clouded today than it was even back then. It's way more convoluted. There's too much distraction. The consumer doesn't know who's on first and really, in my opinion, doesn't know how to be served because they're not being told clearly what the messaging is, how to serve. How should I be served as a buyer or seller in the marketplace? I think it was more clear back then because there was less distraction back then. But personally, I was inept about doing that because I was so new. I didn't know where to start. So I'm grateful for my initial broker and the training I received from a couple of coaches and mentors that has evolved us from, a 2 transaction a year agent 30 years now to, 5 transactions a week some days, some weeks now. So I'm really grateful. But I do know that, to answer your question, the heart of a servant is what I had 30 years ago, and I still have that heart today. I bleed for the people that we serve, and I hope I never lose that edge to serve and to bleed. I'm a little better at it now than I was. Yeah.
Well, before you got into real estate, you were with the Eastman Kodak Company,
Yeah.
or Kodak. Everybody just knows them as Kodak. What did you do for Eastman Kodak?
Back 30 years ago, I had a real job, a corporate job. I had lots of training. I was with Kodak for over a dozen years. They were as well known in the 70s and 80s as Apple is today. They were the number one brand in the world back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And now a lot of young people don't even know who they are. But
they made a little bit of a comeback then. You get little Kodak
the digital
cameras
camera is still part of Kodak's story, but they don't monetize it like they did other products back in the 20, 30 years ago. But the claim to fame of working for Kodak was I was well trained. I spent 1 year in the classroom when I worked a corporate job back in the 80s, late 70s and early 80s. And that training articulates clearly to what I do today for building relationships, knowing how to talk to people, knowing how to solve problems, knowing how to present, knowing how to break down the selling cycle, knowing who the client is, and knowing what a win-win relationship is. All those things were part of the corporate training process for companies like IBM and Kodak back decades ago. That training does not exist today, but I spent so much time in the classroom back when I was starting with my corporate career that transcends into direct application to what I do today. Building relationships, understanding how to solve problems, understanding what win-win really looks like. Okay, and that's what a real estate transaction should always be. Both sides should feel represented, heard, and should feel validated, and should feel that they have actually accomplished something during the transaction. I think our industry loses some of that when you have the negotiation intensity, but that's what I learned at Kodak, that this is a deep business. It was deep back then when I was selling to corporate America, and it's deep today selling to the consumer and trying to understand how to represent them properly. So I am so grateful for Kodak, and I just feel I have an advantage because of what I've learned back decades ago.
So you were in sales with Eastman
I
Kodak.
was. I ran a sales team in Denver and in Kansas City. I had a big old territory and responsible for lots of dollars and lots of people.
Out of curiosity, what did that look like? What is it that you were selling for
Again,
Kodak?
back in the day, Kodak had a digital product division where they actually sold imaging systems to businesses. You have a file folder, a 4-drawer file folder, file cabinet, or 100 file cabinets, or 10,000 file cabinets. And what Kodak did back then was they took the documents in those file folders and miniaturized them, photographed them, filmed them, digitized them, then transmitted them. We were the onset to digital movement of information back in the 70s and 80s. That's where it all started. But we did it by digitizing paper, photographing paper, and that's what I did. I miniaturized paper in businesses, primarily medical records and HR departments and things like that for companies, big companies all over the country. So, yeah.
Got it. And you said that you managed a sales team, right?
Yeah, I had people that worked. I had direct reports around me. I was young at the time, so I started in this as a salesperson, and then I evolved quickly into managing a sales team and working with individuals to help create a solution, technology-driven, equipment-driven, software-driven, solutions-oriented systems that involve multiple people to do these things, and pretty expensive systems to corporate businesses, moving paper from point A to point B.
Got it. And not knowing much about how that corporate sales environment works, were you pushing to build that team, or were you asked to develop?
No, I was asked.
Team?
I wasn't smart enough to know how to build a team. Kodak had the skills and leadership, lots of leadership, very top heavy back in the day, and so I was asked to run certain parts of teams, and then understand how I were to fit in that team, and then how I could get other people to work with me in that team to make sure the customer is confident in what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. And we have a solutions-driven process that has a direct return on investment. I spend this, I save that. The net effect is a savings to the company. So that allows us to be able to sell products and solutions and systems, because the systems that we sold had a direct return on investment. In other words, it was cheaper to invest in our system than not to. That's what our return on investment is about. So I learned all that and brought a team in, and it was fun. It was fun.
Excellent. And
why did I quit? I'm not too sure why. Yeah.
Well, I guess that's the question.
Yeah.
So, but before we get into that, I'm obviously you are well known as a Buffini instructor.
Yeah.
And so that time in the classroom, I can see how that translates. You built a very successful real estate team. So obviously the experience in managing a team at Kodak, that translates. What was that transition? What inspired you to get into this business?
Without boring the audience, basically in 1995, I was newly married, and I made a deal with my wife, Maria, who's our CEO of our company and one of the best leaders in the country as far as I'm concerned. She said, I'll marry you, but I'm not moving out of Kansas City. So I had a corporate job with Kodak, and one of the deals I made with her is that if I marry her, and I'm grateful, changed my life, that I won't move. So that really kind of evolved me into what do I do next? Mm-hmm. And so we got into the real estate gig. So basically that's how it started. Somebody said, you'd be good in real estate. And I said, okay, fine. And my wife said I'd be good in real estate. And we just evolved from Kodak to real estate overnight, basically. And that's literally how it started. And that's why I'm in the business today.
All right. Tell us a little bit about the market conditions in 1995 when you got started.
I don't even remember. I don't really know exactly what the market conditions were compared to they are today. I just know there's ups and downs. When you sell zero real estate back in 1995, you have no idea what the market is. You just go dial for dollars and introduce yourself and pray to God that somebody wants to hire you to do something you know nothing about. Mm-hmm. And don't tell me that any realtor that starts the business with a new license knows what they're doing, because they don't. They just don't. Okay, so it's mom and dad and friends and family that are going to allow you to start and trip on yourself and learn the business. So I didn't care how the market was. If I had a need, I drove anywhere for anyone at any time for any price range. And I learned, like most of us, from the School of Hard Knocks. Okay, and today I still learn from the School of Hard Knocks. I still am learning. There is no way in heck you can understand after 30 or 300 years every nuance of this business. And anyone that tells you that is lying. okay? Because there is nothing that is consistent in this business, okay? Customers are different, houses are different, situations are different, the market is different, prices are different, interest rates are different, psychology is different, politics are different, everything is different. And when you say you've arrived, walk away if I'm a consumer. I've arrived and I am better than sliced bread. I think that is a lie from the devil, and I think that any realtor that depicts that they're too good to not learn is misleading themselves and the public. So the answer is I didn't care what the market was in 1995. I was ready to just serve and sold 2 houses the first year, 13 the second, and then have sold a house every month for the last 27 years. So I'm grateful. It's all good.
And that hasn't really changed, has it? When a brand new agent gets started, right, they should be focused on building their business. But you talked a little bit about distractions that the consumer experiences today, and I want to get back to that at some point. But talk about the distractions that a brand new agent experiences. There are so many things, so many weeds to get into as a brand new agent. How has that evolved since 1995?
I think that any agent, the brand, the consumer is looking for credibility, expertise, knowledge, confidence. Okay, and anybody that's in this business, their primary objective, new or old, is to emit confidence in the marketplace. You're sitting across the table from a consumer, and you could be your first sale or your 5,000th sale. The consumer needs to have confidence that you can perform. Mm-hmm. You can deal with the distractions that are obvious, okay? And the distractions, they are typically many times not even obvious, okay? No one understands, and I mean this, and this is a marketing problem with the real estate community, no one understands the complexity of a real estate transaction because it is so deep. The house is just part of it. The house is probably the easiest part of the whole process. Mm-hmm. The house is 4 walls. The house has some mechanics and some specifics, and it's in a location, and there's only so many things that can be right or wrong with the house. But boy, oh boy, when you're talking about the consumer, a person, a family, a couple, that's where the distraction is. Why am I here? What is your situation? What are you dealing with that is allowing me to be at your kitchen table talking about buying or selling a home? And what can I do to add value for you in your situation? And that takes great skill and is very, very deep. So if the realtor can understand where the consumer, where their customer is coming from, and can help manage that, maybe there's a pregnancy, maybe there's a sickness, maybe there's a divorce, maybe there's a move up, maybe there's a relocation, maybe there's a promotion, maybe there's a mom or dad moving, or maybe someone's sick. Gosh only knows what the consumer is going through. But that's the realtor's job, to understand that and fit solutions and house mechanics and timing and all that stuff into the equation to help the consumer move from one house to another, or up or down. That's only half of it. Because when you're dealing with the other side, usually 9.5 times out of 10, there's 2 realtors involved, 2 families involved. And a good realtor has to understand what's happening on the other side just as skillfully as they have to understand what's happening with their customer. And that is a whole different conversation. Mm-hmm. Because what's happening with the person that's bringing an offer in or helping you co-op on a transaction, what's their situation? And there's so many tentacles. And I can go into so much depth about the complexity of real estate that the public is completely clueless on what they're about to undertake when they get into the real estate transaction. And who they hire is so important, because the consequence of failure is just not, I bought the wrong pair of shoes or I bought the wrong pair of pants. The consequence of failure in a real estate transaction many times can be catastrophic.
Let's talk about that. Let's dive into that a little bit. And, knowing that this is an association level podcast, I still think it's important to address this, right? We've got over 13,000 members of the association. And nobody's going to fault you for anything that you're going to say here, because I think that I'll probably agree, and I hope most of our listenership agrees. What percentage of the agents in the marketplace do you feel are truly trained and know how to instill a reasonable level of confidence in the consumer and actually deliver on what it is that they need and to listen and do all of those things.
Okay, this answer is for the active realtors, not the people that have cap or passive licenses or people that just have it for their own convenience, or there might be investors, but these are for the active realtors that are actually buying and selling, working with the public. I would bet that's 10,000 out of the 13,000, I'm guessing. But the question is, how many of them are good at what they do?
Yeah, that's a good way to say it.
And I believe that each and every one of them are.
Okay.
I believe that deep down, each and every licensed agent that is working with the public has a heart of gold and literally has a heart to serve and understands the mission is probably bigger than themselves, getting a commission check. I firmly believe that. Where the rub is that the tools that realtors have at their disposal either are not obvious, the realtors are not directed to use those tools, brokers aren't equipped to guide their agents to those tools, and I believe that the real estate community leaves a lot on the table by not deploying the resources that are available to them to be excellent at what they do. Okay, tools are part of it. Execution of those tools is even more critical. And I do believe there's passivity where some people, through distractions, busyness, raising families, realtors can be distracted with resources and time, and they do not deploy the investment of time and treasure to learn because they're busy. Okay, and I see that. I see the poor stewardship of execution in a transaction where the consumer is being taken advantage of because realtors do not understand what they're called to do as a group. They soft sell it. They minimize it. I'm transacting a real estate house from one family to another. That is not what we are doing. We are moving people from one chapter of their life to another. Selling a house and being complicit or not caring is a travesty. And I do think that there's a number of us that do not take our responsibility serious enough on the calling that we have to help the public, families, the consumer move properly from one home to another. And I don't think we understand the privilege it is to do that. And I do think that maybe the younger that you are, or the younger that you are, the more indifferent you are to the process, and you treat the public as not a family and more transactional. I do think that hurts the perception that realtors have in the country around. And I think that's one of the greatest reasons why the media is exploiting us, because it's easy to attack a realtor that makes a mistake or attack a realtor that is perceived as greedy. And I don't believe that we are I don't believe we are, but I think it's easy to attack that. And I think that the media has taken a small portion of our business and exploited it to the point where the public at times may be perceived that realtors are inept or unqualified. And I can tell you that is a lie from the devil. The best realtors that I work with around the country and in Kansas City, Alex, you're one of them. It is so fun to work with a competent resource on the other side of the table, knowing that any curveball that gets thrown, any kind of obstruction or problem that gets thrown at us, we will deal with professionalism, with care, with grace, with honesty, and with integrity. And I'm getting in the weeds here, but I'm really passionate about what's on the line when you fail the consumer. And I do believe that our industry has been dumbed down by the media, saying we just do certain things, we just sell houses, we're not worth the fees that we're creating. The brokers aren't worth the investment that they help in the business. And I just think that we're walking down a trap of the public not understanding how freaking competent we are. I know I got into a lot of depth there, but
That's good.
I'm really passionate about this. And I don't think anybody understands when you've got somebody praying that their house sells at a fair price at a certain time, and then somebody comes in and circumvents that, and it shouldn't have happened when there's a problem that happens and the realtors are not competent enough to solve the problem when 9.5 times out of 10 the problem is solvable. But when you have inexperienced people that are not trained and don't understand the net objective, they tend to take the easy way out and they walk away from a problem that should never have been a problem in the first place.
From the perspective of a member of the public, what should they be looking for in an agent to make sure that they are not one of the consumers that experiences that failure that you talked about?
That's a good question. I don't want to get into a huge testimonial, but I'm a big fan of the Brian Buffini organization and have been for well over 20 years. For those of you that are in real estate that are curious about Brian Buffini, look this company up and check them out. If you're the consumer, any realtor that's aligned with the Brian Buffini organization in some way, shape, or form has some credentials and some expertise and some training that is top shelf. And I think that the public should always, one, work first by who do you know that you've had a good experience with? Okay, so first-hand testimonials. And number two, asking for clear references from any realtor that you're speaking to on who have they worked with that has a good experience, and more importantly, who have they worked with that didn't have a good experience. And is a realtor bold enough to give a name of someone that had a bad experience so that the consumer can get a perspective of who they're hiring and why they're hiring this person, okay? 9 out of 10 of my prospects come because of a direct personal experience that someone has worked with on my team, and that's the best way to do business. And that's that's why you won't see me, Dan O'Dell, the tall fat guy, on a billboard with my face, because that would be detrimental to my brand. We work by relationship, people that respect us, love us, understand how we operate, and they refer us over and over and over again. And it just makes life easy because the public kind of knows what they're going to get, and they're going to come out the other end happy.
So if I'm a brand new agent, I don't have those references. I don't have people who have had experiences with me in the field. What am I hoping for? What am I hoping for from a consumer in order to develop that relationship and enter into agency with them?
New agents should align themselves with resources, brokerage, or teams where they can be trained, okay? And number two, I would, tell the agents to start calling people they love and letting them know they're in the business and that they are looking to build a clientele. And who do you know that needs to buy or sell real estate? And then when you get into the transaction, don't go alone. Take an experienced, seasoned agent with you as you're getting started, okay? Everyone started from zero, okay? And including me, including you. And the public needs new realtors in the business to help offset the old people that are going to phase out like me, okay? And they need people with passion and care. You can learn the business. You can learn the mechanics of selling real estate. The hard part is learning the nuances of why the public needs you and what are the issues facing a family that a realtor can help deploy to get the home transaction done well. That's the thing realtors don't understand. I think it's about a house. House is not unimportant, but it is significantly less important than the issue of why I'm in your house. Why am I here? And it takes a lot of skill to unpack that. And a lot of times the consumer doesn't want to tell you. I'm here because I'm going through an issue. And I don't want to tell you. Well, I can't do my job unless you tell me what's going on. I don't want to have you left at the altar. You're ready to close. And all of a sudden you're going through divorce and your spouse won't sign the papers, which has happened. And I can go on and on and on with the pros and cons about problems. But the more that the realtor can articulate and break down why they are here, why they're at the kitchen table, the better chance of success. And if you know someone, you have confidence in someone, it's easier for my customers to interact with me about why we're here, and then we can get going, get down to business, create a plan, and go. So if you're new, get help. Take somebody with you.
There you go.
And tap some resources that are out there. They are there.
I love
That's
it.
my advice.
Great message. Well, let's pivot into talking a little bit about the market. I've had a lot of discussions with agents from many different companies and from different parts of the marketplace right now. I do feel like I want your take on this as well, but I do feel like we have a little bit of a sense of amnesia and we forget what summers tend to be like. Right. That being said, there are a lot of people that feel like our current market environment feels a little bit different this year. We are seeing an increase in contingencies, and we're seeing an increase in months of inventory, slight, nothing super dramatic. But I'm curious as to your thoughts. Do you think that anything different this year is happening compared to previous summers? And if so, why?
If I looked at the world, I would say that the sky could be falling. I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. Every market is local. Every market is neighborhood by neighborhood, price point by price point, county by county, situation by situation. And we've had no trouble selling homes this year. Summertime is always interesting, but so is the springtime, so is the fall, and so is the winter. And I don't see anything different than a typical market right now, sitting at 6.5% interest rates, which the public is not used to. But I do see that the public is waking up. I see that the new norm is rates higher than what they were years ago. And people are living, dying, having babies, transitioning, moving, and home sales are happening in spite of the economy, the interest rates, and whatever, because life happens. And my job is to be involved with people while they're changing situations in their life. So I do not see a huge change in the marketplace. I do see skill sets that need to be refined. I see realistic conversations that have to happen up front with the customer. This is the reality of what we're doing. You're not going to get a premium price on your house with 42 people wanting to buy it, probably, but we will sell it. Okay, and what your expectations were a year ago or 2 years ago, they need to change. And my job is to give you direct information, whether you like it or not. You're hiring me to be a pro. I'm going to tell you the way it is. It may take a week or a month or 2 months to sell your house. We need to be sensitive to what the public is saying. We need to be sensitive to market trends and market activity. We need to be sensitive to what else is selling in your neighborhood. We need to be realistic. And sometimes that is be patient. Sometimes that is we've got to be aggressive. Sometimes that is, and more times than not, when you set the right expectations, people are going to be overjoyed with what happens. If you don't set the right expectations, people are going to be disappointed. And I am guilty because I have been living in 2000, 2001, 2002 of just saying, wait, and things will be good. Well, right now, in the last year and a half, we've had to set expectations early. That is the best advice I can give. Fire me now for telling you the truth now. We're going to get along a whole lot better versus me telling you things are going to be incredibly good and then it disappoints you in a month. I'd rather tell you now the expectations. And if you don't want to hear that, I may not be the right resource for you. And I don't see a huge change in the marketplace here in Kansas City compared to what I've seen other years. It's more patient. It's more consistent. And I do think that July and early August, people are distracted from vacations and going back to school. I do think that whatever lull you may be seeing right now in July of 2025 will be quickly changing come the fall.
I like it.
And I think there's a lot of economic reasons where things may change drastically for the good for the consumer. There is thousands, tens of millions of people wanting to get into the marketplace that are waiting. Waiting for what? I don't know. But they're waiting. And that is a national trend. Okay? There is pent-up demand. Talk to any lender that has all these applications on file, pre-approvals. There is a pent-up demand where the public is waiting for something to happen. And when you see some dramatic reduction of rates or some economic reality that causes a consumer to get a fire lit and get going, we're going to be busy. We're going to be busy. And I would tell realtors to be ready and to stay engaged with their clientele because a switch is going to be flipped and it's going to be a version of 2021 all over again. There's been 2 years of pent-up demand where people have just been waiting. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
That's one person's opinion. That's what I think.
All right, before we finish up, I want to go back to your time at Kodak for just a second.
Yeah.
So in 2012, I believe that's when Kodak filed for bankruptcy. Long after you
Correct.
left. And that was the beginning of the end for them was when
Right.
Dan Odell left in
That's true.
1995. I'm curious, is there anything, thinking about Kodak's story, is there anything that we can learn as an industry from companies like Kodak? We're in a moment where technology is rapidly evolving. What can we learn as an industry from previous times like this to make sure that we don't go the way of a Kodak or a Blockbuster, et cetera?
Loaded question. Kodak went away because technology changed and Kodak did not react quick enough. That's why they left the business. Technology is changing in real estate every day. Things are done faster, more efficiently, AI, marketing, branding. And all of those have done one thing for me. They have allowed me to sell more real estate in the same amount of time. When internet came in the mid-'90s when I started and realtors were going to be obsolete by the year 2000, all technology has done is allowed me to transact, to do more business. One of the fundamental things about real estate is the bottom line is, I'm talking about consumer-driven transactions, people buying and selling for their own personal use. I don't see that changing. I see, as a matter of fact, the public becoming more skeptical about technology, about AI, about what they're being told, and about what options they have. I think that realtors are going to become more instrumental in the process in the future than they are now because no one knows what the truth is. And if I'm looking you in the eye, Alex, like we are right now, we've been friends for a long time. I know what I'm looking at, and I know how believable we are as practitioners in a very tough business. The consumer is begging for that, and I do not believe that the Uber way of selling real estate by dialing up a house and putting an offer in and selling it by 5 o'clock is ever going to be viable. I think technology is going to continue to provide information that has to be discerned. It has to be peeled back and it has to be interpreted. And then the situation, each consumer situation has to be weighed. And I do believe that real estate agents are going to be more important in the future, the good ones that understand the complexity of what they're doing and why they are here than they ever were in the past 30 years since I started this business. That's what I think. Okay, so I think that the comparison of Kodak to the comparison to the real estate community, there's a consumer involved in here. When I was with Kodak, it's a business. It's an institutional deal. The consumer, the public, my heart, my soul, my kids, my family, my future, my existence is dependent upon great execution of real estate.
Dan, I see a trend there. You started talking about how the distraction of the consumer and wading through those distractions and cutting to the point for the consumer, right? That was an important part of the process. It seems like maybe what you're saying is the more distraction there is for the consumer, the more information there is, the more tools that they have that could distract them, the more a real practitioner who understands the marketplace and who can empathize with the consumer can truly be of value to them. And I couldn't appreciate that perspective more. I agree with that. One last question, and it's one that I have to ask because of my friend Bobby Howe. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about today that we should have talked about?
No, I will say this. Be grateful for what the KCRAR organization is doing for the membership in Kansas City. I have gotten to know some of the leadership this year, especially our head guy, Kip Cooper, and Bobby Howe, and you, Alex. And I know we have people bleeding for the real estate agent to keep us viable and keep us top of mind in a distracted public setting. And I am really grateful for what the Kansas City chapter is doing here to help create a viability for our industry, because we are a needed solution to real estate. I don't think the public can do business without us, and so I'm grateful. So thank you for that.
Your message is strong, Dan. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate it.